Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome. So we are, we can start now?
Alright.
All right. All right, welcome everybody to my first ever, no, I guess not first ever, but first meeting in quite a while.
First meeting you were in charge of.
That's right,
Uh-huh.
yes. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order here, and we're gonna start off with roll call.
She's not a member yet.
Not
We
yet.
have to vet her voter in before.
Oh.
We have to add, yeah, we have to go through process, so she'll be a member next.
Okay,
Because
cool.
then the board also has to approve, we'll say, yeah, you're here, that's great.
Oh my gosh.
And then the board has to actually approve.
Steps on steps on steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm here, Susan
Okay.
Dominigetti.
Kate McDonald here.
Elizabeth Nail here.
Ryan Sanders here.
And we did reduce the number of teachers on, as we're looking at the fewer teachers, we now have, we'll need to address this in bylaws also, but we now just have one teacher and then a backup
You mean on this committee?
on the committee.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is to what, maintain balance with parents and teachers?
It is to recognize that there are fewer teachers available to do the jobs they need to do.
Okay.
And so it was a good place to cut a teacher
Oh, okay.
And I'm
out
here
of
as,
the committee, not,
And what?
I'm here as a classified staff representative.
and she's
Gotcha.
a classified staff,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. All right, let's do 1.3, the invocation. In charter, we all do it together. Is that how we do it?
Sounds good.
Let's all do it together.
This is our school. May peace dwell here. May the rooms be full of
contentment.
May love abide here.
Love of one another, love of our school, and love of life itself. Let us remember that as many hands build a house, so many hearts build a school.
You. We do not appear to have any audience on Zoom and nor in the room. Any hidden audience members out there? Okay, there's no audience for 1.4. Are there any agenda modifications? 1.5.
So, yes, we have on the agenda, again, 3.5 is teacher remuneration. We have a meeting that needs to happen before we can address that here, and that meeting has not happened yet.
Okay.
So, my suggestion is that we table that item and remove it from this agenda.
Okay, and then you will bring it back when it is actually actionable?
Yes.
Okay. Well, anything else? Okay. 1.6, approve August 12th minutes. Is there any discussion to be had there about prior minutes? I can say that it was hard to read through without having actually been there. But I guess I had some familiarity with those. If there's no discussion about it.
I can make a motion to approve the minutes.
Cool.
Second.
All right, let's vote. So Susan, are you a voting member?
I'm a voting member of this committee.
Okay, gotcha. Well then, Susan, why don't you kick off the vote?
Susan Dominigetti, aye.
Kate McDonald, aye.
Elizabeth Nail, aye.
Ryan Sanders, aye. Okay, 2.1, Charter Impact Monthly Report with Annie Gilbert.
Good afternoon, members of the Finance Committee. How is everybody doing? Uh-oh, can't hear me?
You're next to the microphone.
Can you hear me? No?
You're next to the microphone.
Yeah, well, I'm using my laptop. Let me plug in an external.
And then it will be under select a speaker, the ViewSonic, second one down. And now, Annie, would you mind talking to us again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I just plugged in an external speaker. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So we have actuals through the end of August, obviously very beginning of the school year, not quite a full month, but this presentation does include actual results through the end of August. Big number is the August enrollment. So I had Kelly send me the enrollment at the end of August, which was, as of Monday, would have been 215. There was a couple of students being enrolled on Monday, 2 or 3, which would have brought us to 215. Prior year was 234. We're projecting an ADA of 91%, which brings that number to 195.65. So the reason I have this as a bullet point is my financials take into consideration and use this enrollment number of 215, an ADA of 195, which is lower than what we budgeted. We're now forecasting a deficit of 294,000. As you recall, we worked hard to get that the budget balanced, but that was assuming enrollment similar to the prior year. Based on the current level of spending, cash is forecasted at the end of the year to be 194,000, which represents 17 days cash in hand. And the reason we're using that metric is when you look to go out to finance any kind of facility, they're typically looking at that as an important metric, and they usually like to see at least 60 days cash on hand. Any questions?
Is there any, I mean, now seeing actual enrollment and seeing how far off target it is there a plan to start working to reduce that deficit in other ways, assuming that it doesn't grow?
That would be my question to you. This was new to me as of Friday afternoon.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the reason we're discussing. There's no plan that I'm aware of at this time. So this is based on what we budgeted as expenses. This is including the current staffing that we have. And this is including the actual enrollment at the end of August.
And sorry, I think that my question is born out of like me engaging with this topic for 10 total minutes. So pardon, I think I have a couple dumb questions, but to create a new financial plan, do we engage with you to do that? Or do we make a plan and?
Well, no, obviously I'm here to assist in any way. So if I can be of help with suggestions or if you want me to model, different scenarios, I'm also happy to do that. So
okay.
If we looked at, particular options, we could play with what that looks like, scenario A, scenario B, scenario C.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. This isn't really helpful at the beginning of the year. Forecast, actual of 215, that budget at 224 is not, because it should be 234. But at the very bottom, you can see the revenue per ADA and expenses per ADA. Obviously, our expenses are higher than our revenue. We budgeted for almost identical expenditures to revenue. And I will go through when you see the actuals, so you can see where the expenditures are trending higher. And remember, this is just through the first month of school, which isn't even a full month. So it becomes very clear or clearer as the months progress. You see a pattern to start to, reveal itself. But right now, would that be about 3 weeks of school, Susan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the ADA cuts $190,000 from the budget. It also, unfortunately, there's several revenue sources that look to enrollment and ADA in their funding. So SB 740 is one of them. They use formula, they look at your enrollment, and they use a factor. So unfortunately, that's $23,000 less in SB 740, which covers rent and rent costs. Our forecast does include at the very bottom, you can see FY 24-25. We have $532,000 in one-time funding. I didn't put the total, I'm sorry, for last year, but that's lower than the prior year. And the one other thing I have there in the second bullet is this forecast does not include universal pre-K funding of 55,978. We do have to the end of the year to spend that, but that I also don't believe that expenses have been forecast for UPK. Susan, can you confirm that? So I know we talked last year, you were potentially going to hire someone to plan the UPK, and there's a report due on this soon. So that's another thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah, we have some work to do with our kinder teachers that will come out of that funding to really address, and some more information that we need to really address the issues of TK. So you'll see things coming out of it for that. Now that we truly have a TK classroom with children that will be four for the full year, the realization of the difference between serving 4-year-olds and 5 and 6-year-olds is becoming really clear. So it's time for us to help the teachers learn how to manage that and how others are managing that. It's really, when we started with TK, kids were 4 for like 2 or 3 months. And now they are 4 for the full year. So they're coming in next year. They will be coming in as young as 3, at least for a month or 2. So it really changes the dynamics of the classroom in a lot of ways. So this money, now that we know what we're dealing with, this money will be helpful to support those teachers in addressing.
Are there any expenses currently built in for that UPK?
There should be. So Annie, this is one of the areas where you and I should go through and look at expenses for.
Okay, well, because the reason I didn't include the revenue is I wasn't clear on what expenditures are specifically tied to UPK. So
Yeah.
unless we know that we have expenditures that can be allowable for UPK funding, that's the reason I left it out, but it amounts to 55,978.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Okay. Sorry. I had a question on the slide before, actually. Do we, and I know it's kind of like a very early smoke signal, but do we know why the costs per ADA are so much higher than we thought they would be?
So that's going to be on the expenses slide, the trending of expenses. So they're trending higher than budgeted. So we budgeted them to be lower, but now they're coming in a bit higher. And so let me point out, so one thing, so remember the deficit overall is forecast to be 293,000 deficit.
Yeah.
There's 2 pieces of that, right? There's a reduced revenue. And if you look on the far right box here, that unfavorable revenue number is 240,000. I'm just rounding.
Yeah.
And then if you look at expenses, you have an additional 50,000. We'll go through this in a minute, but you have an additional 50,000 of expenses that are trending higher than the budget. When you add those 2 pieces together, that gets you at that deficit of 293,000.
Okay.
So the main thing is certified salaries. So the reason they're the same is because obviously this is showing year to date through the end of August, but you can see that negative unfavorable $80,000 or $79,000 for certificated salaries. We really need to drill into that, Susan. I'll send you once again the forecast that has the salaries and see if it's matching up. Is there something that was added that we weren't aware of that we didn't budget for? Because
Yeah. And there should be. So
yeah.
Salaries shouldn't be that volatile.
Yeah,
right?
especially since we didn't increase them last year. So is that 79,000 for the year?
Well, if you
Or so far, is that, so, yeah, is that that we're actually over budget by 79,000 now, or we're forecasted to be over by
So
79?
the first month, we're forecasted to be over by 79. That 79 includes, remember, certificated staff of all kinds, not just teachers.
Right,
So it includes the teacher salary line item it's forecasting to be 65,000 over for the year.
okay,
Administrator salaries a little bit over 6,600, and teachers extra duty stipends for some reason. There were some big stipend amounts paid out in July and August. And that could be that those are one time, and what we have forecasted for the rest of the year is not applicable. But overall, that's a certificated salaries in general. That's for the year, what we're forecasting based on those first 2 months of actuals.
so we'll have to detail that. The stipends that went out were, there are a few for CEI, which would have been about $3,000 for CEI, and then we had the ELOP summer school, so that's where, which would be about 6,000. Those are one-timers, so I'm not sure.
And
then,
CEI is Community Engagement Initiative. I
right,
don't have that funding for the current year. Did you receive more funding for
No.
CEI? Okay.
but that's expense to finish that we put into the CEI. Yeah,
But to the best of your knowledge, that would still be budgeted expenses,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, it should be.
So it's strange
The
that like all of
ELOP.
this is all way over already.
Yeah, and so that's, the questions I ask is like, are we, so our more experienced teachers, our longer term teachers get paid starting in July rather than August, and I'm wondering if as we've made that mistake before of forecasting based on that early pay, and then like we're still paying the same people in May when they're not supposed to get. So I think you and I need to go through that, because I haven't hired an $80,000 additional teacher.
Right.
Just saying, nor has anybody received $80,000 worth of raises. So I would, we need to go through, it may be like 10,000 over budget if.
To me, when I'm looking at the detail by month, and it just shows me the first 2 months of actual, it looks like the July amount was much higher than what we forecast. Perhaps there was some summer school. I'm not sure what it's comprised
Yeah.
of.
Would
But
be about 6,000 for summer school.
But there's a large, well,
9,000 total.
yeah.
To go with
Something-
what you're saying, Susan, is the monthly budget for, it would be May, June, and July, are those equivalent to the budgeted amount for August and September?
When you
Like,
say
is it-
May, June, and July, I really need to, I got this Friday afternoon.
You need to analyze it. So because my first question would be the April, May, and June, if the budget is the same as January, February, March, then that's why we're over. If your budget forecast shows that we're paying the same level of salaries in April and May and June as we are in January, February, March, then that would be something to look at, because we do the summer holdback. We, are unusual in the fact that we start paying teachers in June. That was an agreement we made with the teachers a few years ago. Or July, we start that payment. So my first thing is like, let's look at that and make sure we've got our ducks in a row. And then, I don't know why we would be up to 80,000.
Yeah, so that's an important thing to get a handle on early, because I can see that the monthly amount we're forecasting for teachers is higher going forward. So that's why I suspect that it's something in that July amount.
Yeah, it probably is.
Interestingly enough, yes, because when I look at July that was in the budget, there's nothing for salaries for teachers, but there's 87,000 in the actual. So something's not right there.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely agreeing with you. And so probably there is something in June that shouldn't be there. June 25.
Well, that's gonna have to be my first, I will make sure you and I need to meet on this
Right,
week.
yeah, we definitely.
Because I can tell that it's not, it's everything that's in July. And so I have to drill down in that number and see why is it so high. So, anyhow, this is the expenses. Any questions on any other line items in the expenses? It looks like we're trending, other than books and supplies, which are slightly over, and that would be kind of expected at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
And what we can do, there was a 15,000 curriculum associates purchase in July. But we have more budgeted for September, October, November. My guess is that those are probably less than they're budgeted.
Yeah.
So that we're on budget.
Yeah, our big expenses are in July for the big
Right,
period,
for the year.
books.
So those, once I take out the September, October, November, will be on budget for
Yeah, should be back on budget.
textbooks.
For the sub-agreement services, just out of curiosity, the difference, since the difference is relatively high, with the budget versus the actuals, what is that component? 'Cause I know
So it's coming in less than what we budgeted. I'm comparing the original budget, and I got to look at it side by side here. The original budget for sub-agreement.
What are sub-agreement services? Are
Oh,
those-
the nursing, special education, substitute teachers if they're purchased through a vendor, a company, transportation, security, and other educational consultants. The only thing budgeted in July and August was the nursing and special education. There was no nursing costs in the month of July. There's no nursing costs in the month of August. So the nurse probably started in August, but those services need to be accrued at year end. So they weren't paid obviously in August, but we budgeted an amount. And special education, we also budgeted so the monthly budget for special education is 10,238. In the month of August, we had 1,553. So that's the reason for the large reduction in that line item at the moment. It doesn't mean say that when September comes in, we might have some overlap from August to September.
And that was part of my curiosity too. I know that towards the end of last year, some of like the psychologist, I believe, was like the contract amount kind of came in at a greater lump, and so it's just
right. The large, they kind of delay their billing. Sometimes those sub-agreement vendors are delayed in invoicing, and we saw that in last year's actual expenditures as well. Any other questions on that?
So hopefully if we've budgeted correctly, those lumps will not affect the overall because it'll just show like, oh, we have more money in there than
as
we
long as we
spent.
don't attempt to realize that favorableness now and use it for
Right.
something else.
Yes.
No,
Right.
we don't want to leave it allocated.
Precisely.
And so that's what I want to meet with you on this week, Susan. Let's just reallocate those funds to other months, knowing that the cost will come in. For instance, special education. Just because $1,500 was the only thing that we expensed in the month of August, I suspect that's much higher. Was budgeted at $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah. I would, as Elizabeth said, I would want to move that forward to where it's likely to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we don't have a lot of activity in August, so therefore we don't have a full, plus we don't necessarily get bills until September for August, so it's,
The other strange thing I see is I don't understand how salaries can be over by 80,000 certificated, but benefits are under. That makes no sense to me. Which makes me want to ask our payroll department. So you know, if you see an increase in salaries, you would see a correspondent increase in the burden and benefits for staff.
Yep, that makes sense.
So we'll drill into the payroll piece because that's really where the biggest difference is coming from. But unfortunately, the bigger picture is that 50,000, that's the 49,778 of that deficit is coming from this revised, if you will, forecast, which we can change. But the biggest part is coming from a reduction in enrollment.
Great.
This is important. This is the fund balance. So there's a requirement and there's a requirement in California that your fund balance, your ending fund balance, be at least 5%. Right now, based on the deficit we're forecasting, we would have a fund balance just below 5% at 4.8%. Do you know, Chico, have you ever talked to them about that, Susan, about fund balance, minimum requirements? Do you know if theirs is higher or different than the state?
I think it's 3% for Chico Unified.
Okay, well, that would be good for me to know. I'm not aware, you know, is that in your charter agreement?
It's probably in the MOU.
I will drill down on that, but I wanted to point that out because we definitely don't want to fall under a minimum threshold.
Sorry, what happens when you do?
Get nasty letters from Chico Unified.
Okay.
And I already kind of went over this. Right now we have 54 days cash on hand. We'd have about 17 days cash on hand at year end if the budget plays out the way it's trending and the enrollment does not increase or no other changes are made to the budget. And then all the attachments. Do you want to go through these? These are, so really what this is a more detailed look at what I just showed you. Those summary pages for revenue are more detailed in this page. Like if you look at the salaries, certificated salaries, for example, in that expenses, that first bucket right here, you can see that certificated includes teacher salaries, substitutes, extra duty stipends, pupil support, and administrator salaries. It's comprised of those line items, and then it just breaks down in more detail on the far right what the year to date is, and then the current period would be for the months of July and August. I think you have this in your, I'm sure you have this in your packet. So there's this is a detailed look. And then this is the balance sheet, current cash, current assets, current liabilities. Statement of cash flows. No accounts payable aging at the moment. And then this is, I know you usually like to go through this. This is the check register. Did you want to go through this right now?
Sure. Yeah.
Let me know if there's anything specific. I'd have to research it and I probably wouldn't have the answer off the top of my head, but Susan might on some of these.
I was curious on the ERC refund item number 12257.
Yes, so we put in for the ERC funds, we should have over 500,000 coming in. It hasn't come in from the IRS yet, but we did have to pay for the people who processed that for us. So we did that, and that's their funding.
I also know, so even though that was a check that went out in the month of August, that was accrued, meaning it was recognized in the previous year. So they made an it's not an audit adjustment, it was just, it was recognized in the last year, so FY 24 that's being audited right now. It won't be an expense for the current year.
And is there any more update as far as expectations of timelines, if and when on that, or?
No, we have we now have, it's called Text Now, I think, that's reporting to us what's going on. They're now in the process of processing our months of funding. As Experian has also offered to loan us the income if we need it in the meantime. So we're not anywhere near that, of course. So Annie and I have agreed that we're not going to book it as coming in as income until we actually see it, because we don't know how long it'll actually take to get it. It would solve problems if it came in.
And what are induction fees for the individual teachers?
So when we're working with a new teacher, they have a requirement to go to a 2-year induction program. And so we pay for that. It used to be that we would charge the teachers a portion of that,
I
so.
remember this, yeah.
Yeah, so the state has decided we can't do that anymore, so we have to pay for all of it. So there are a few teachers that we had to go back and say, oh, here's your $600 back, and that's what that is.
In general, the American Express tends to be kind of supplies type purchasing.
Yeah, you should have a copy
Oh, is
of
it?
that, also the expenses that go to that. After the check
I
register.
didn't put them in the packet because it was that thick.
This is the
And
biggest
I
packet
wanted
I've
to
ever.
scan this to you guys and
Okay, so if you're interested in looking in the detail this month, we can share that with you. But I guess it was pretty big,
Yeah.
as it often is over the summer when we're getting things done. But the actual, what we actually paid is here, the bill. It's just not the support isn't on there.
If you don't have any other questions, I don't have anything in my packet, but if you ever have follow-ups, I'm happy to answer them, and Susan and I will go over that payroll discrepancy, or, why it's so much higher than budgeted in the coming weeks.
I guess the only question I have at this point is just kind of how we conduct business here. So it feels kind of unapprovable for next month because we all think that can't possibly be it, right? Like we can't possibly be $80,000 over.
Right,
So like next month when we go to approve this, do we say it's not approved? or-
So it's whether or not you want, for these reports, do you want the board to actually look at the same reports? Or are you gonna hold back that and say, don't look at these reports because they're too far off? That's your approval.
That's what
You're
we're.
just saying, we suggest that these
The board.
reports go into to the board so they can look at them too. And so, I think it's a good idea to share that, even though that's off. I think because we're looking at the out of balance issue, I think we should be informing that board. I'll speak as a member of the committee. I think we should approve it so that they're aware too, and we're not.
Gotcha. Do we need any action? Do we need to make that decision right now? Or is that for next month?
We usually do.
Okay.
Would you be open to a motion?
Sure, unless there's anything more.
Just a question, when does the board meet?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. Will you be meeting with Annie before then, or is that a quick
No, one
time
of my
period?
meetings. Oh, you're saying so I could.
So
figure
you
out
can
that date?
figure out before the board
Yeah.
meeting?
We probably could do that.
Then we would need to vote on it again after it got modified.
But we
No,
could
we would-
recommend this to the board and then with like the stipulation or something
Bring the
that
update.
you know,
was the motion
that
I was gonna suggest.
Susan is going to be updating us on that number.
I think we could. It won't be a very long meeting, Annie. Yeah, it won't be long. So, you okay with that, Annie, that we meet in the next couple of days to go over that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm drilling into the payroll as we speak, but whenever your schedule allows, I will make myself available.
Right, any other conversation? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Oh, it's a complicated motion.
It's gonna be a long one.
Move that we recommend the charter impact reports to charter council with the exception and stipulation of review of the certified salaries budget versus year-to-date.
I can second that.
All right, let's vote. Susan?
Susan Domenichini, aye.
Kate McDonald, aye.
Elizabeth Nail, aye.
Ryan Sanders, aye. Cool. Let's see, on to attendance and enrollment. I think 2.2.
So I had to pull that out because it was a report that included student names. So I ripped it out of all the packets.
Oh,
and so I can't really report on that. So we do have the part of the report that Annie shared that as of Monday, we're at 215. Yeah, so I don't have, she had gone through and given like who was in the percentages and stuff, and I
Oh,
had to throw that away. So
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. So all of 2.2 and its sub-items?
Yeah.
Do we need conversation on 2.3? It seems like we just looked at that, as well as 2.4. Didn't we just look at all?
Yep, we went through all of 2.2 all number,
All the twos.
all the financial reports.
Okay. Okay. On to on to business, new business. 3.1, accept new parent members. Is there a possibility that there's multiple? Oh, am I one of the new members?
No,
Oh.
no, it's
It just says members.
green over there.
Okay.
This is because we have 4, 5 positions for parents. We're glad to have one,
Okay.
so.
All right. Would anybody like to discuss Michelle right in front of her? I worked with Michelle on Parent Council, and I found her to be very fun to work
I'm excited to have her on the finance committee.
with.
Dedicated and does a lot. So I think your input will be very valued. So I will move that we accept, I mean, assuming that you're wanting to apply. Okay. Let me confirm that first. I move that we accept and will recommend to the board that Michelle Green be a parent representative on the finance committee.
I will second it. Can I second it? As the chair, can I make?
Absolutely
Okay.
can.
Okay. I second.
If you do it all the time, people kind of go,
Right, then I'm railroading.
yeah. But you absolutely can.
Okay. Any further discussion? Let's vote.
Susan Domenichini, aye.
Kate McDonald, aye.
Elizabeth Nail, aye.
Ryan Sanders, aye. So from
That's it.
here on out, she gets to vote on all the rest of the agenda?
No, she
Oh.
has to, we have to take her to the board,
Oh,
and
that's
they
it.
have to approve her, and so next meeting she can vote.
Okay. Okay, well then, congrats. Moving on to 3.2, new meeting schedule. Somewhere deep in this packet here.
So this is the standard, and yeah, maybe you want to change the time it starts, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I guess what we should, as parents should talk, but it'd be really convenient is 3:15, so we get out when they get out. if we're gonna be here in the middle of the day anyways, but let's talk. Unless, well, wait a minute. Y'all wanna make it 3:15?
I can't do it.
Oh, can't do that. Okay.
For the parents that work here, it
Yeah,
would
it's a
Yeah.
hard turnaround.
Then it seems like we just keep it as is until we figure out a better.
4:15?
yeah.
Okay. This is the existing schedule anyways, right?
Right.
We don't need to vote to not change it.
There's a little star on the August 12th date. Is that star there for,
Forgot to move it.
okay. Nice catch.
It might be,
It's just sad.
because
No,
it's around the time when we do,
Registration.
Registration, yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
so,
I think we may be not doing what we did this year next year.
yeah, we're not.
That was too tight a turnaround.
So, yeah, there's, that's the second week in August, August 12th. And it probably will fall on the registration days.
Yes.
We usually have registration and then service that week, and then the following week is when school starts. So that's probably what that star is doing there.
Okay.
We could just say TBA for August.
TBD.
Because we do anticipate it moving to somewhere.
Yeah, we always have to fudge things around a little bit. The annual calendar isn't approved yet. We usually do that December, January. So once that's done, then we'll be able to redo that.
Gotcha. Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve this schedule?
I move to approve the schedule.
I second it.
I can second it.
Okay. Let's have a vote.
Susan Dominican, aye.
Kate McDonald, aye.
Elizabeth Now, aye.
Brian Sanders, aye. All right, 3.3, update on new school site.
We have, our Chico Unified has purchased the school site for us, so we are officially on that track and starting to talk about leasing the property. So that's the second part of it, is that they purchased this for us and then we sign a lease for the property, no cost of the lease for 30 or 40 years. So then we can start actually building on it. So that's a nice piece that we're talking about as far as that goes. And then I know the facilities committee is working too. So we are on the road to a new site.
Does anybody have any questions? Comments?
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
3.4, proposal of increase to experience credit for classified staff. What is that?
So this is a question that came up as we work with our classified staff. I'm not sure we got the research done on this because I knew that we might not. That what we're finding is we're getting our aides especially who have more than significant amount of experience, like 5-6 years of experience. And we're limited to giving them credit for 3 years. And there's a tendency to want $20 or more an hour. So, so am I making myself clear? Like,
I don't even know what you
you're
mean by,
looking at me weird,
what do
so
you
I'm like,
mean credit for 3 years? Does that
Okay.
even-
so when we hire a new person, if they have experience, they can get up to 3 years. So they move over on the columns to column 4. So if somebody has 3 to 5 years of experience, 8 years, we've had one with like 16 years of experience, they can only get 3 years of credit because that's what we do. For the teachers, we can give them 8 years of credit. So that's just a comparison. And it's a fairly common process. But what we're finding is we have more and more aides who have significant experience who, when we offer them a job, kind of go, I don't know about that because of the pay. So, so that was a suggestion. We did talk about the fact that Kate, I believe, had asked, or someone had asked, to make sure of how that would affect those we already have, and I'm not sure that we have that yet. How the current classified staff, like if somebody was given 3 years and had 5 years. We haven't done that yet, so I don't know that actually this is looking at it as an action item tonight. Because that means going through all the classified files.
Yeah.
One at a time and going, this person was hired with this amount and they had that experience. So we have to go back to,
We also
Do
discussed,
that.
only doing this for new hires as well, so,
right, we talked, yeah, so the committee had asked last time that we look at who this would, if somebody who's been with us for 5 years would then not get the same credit as somebody for.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was the question and we have not had time to answer that question yet.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, just so that I'm understanding? So it's basically like if you were to hire somebody in range 4 who has, say, 5 years experience, you would still be able to start them at 18.84 an hour?
correct.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, okay, just wanna make sure.
Just to clarify on the proposal, what is the proposed maximum years?
We're proposing 5 years. So,
5 instead of
for
3
2
years.
Yeah,
The information you were asked for from last month seems pretty achievable. Is it?
it's achievable, yeah, but it's just a lot of opening a lot of files and doing a lot of calculations, so it's not, hasn't been. And I said that at the
Yeah.
last meeting, this may not happen.
Yeah.
In a month, so, well,
Well, and we're not hiring anyone new right now.
Right.
So if we just wait until next month until we have that data,
You're right.
we're not losing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just it being already at negative 274 or whatever, like,
well, it
it
wouldn't,
does
yeah,
feel like we'd like to know what we're deciding.
yeah, and we would not be, as Kate says, it's not gonna change the current pay that people have,
Oh, I thought it would be, or you're proposing
No.
that it would be retroactive?
no.
Only the new hires.
I think
No. Well, we're proposing that if we look at that and see that it's gonna affect people, first, that's what we need to do, is see who it would affect here.
Uh-huh.
And then, we would probably not put that into effect until we actually hire somebody on this pay scale. So, and we're not intending to hire anybody new on this pay scale. So it's just a matter of putting things into place so we can.
Okay.
And
So,
again, it's totally a discussion item. When we see things like that, as administration, we say, hey, maybe the finance committee should look at that and consider
yeah,
what they want to do. So it is preferable to hire people with experience.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I just feel still, I apologize, I feel a little fuzzy on what even the proposal is then. So the proposal is you would like to move to a maximum of 5 years and not make it retroactive. That is the proposal, or you're still trying to
right,
figure out what your proposal
we're not
is?
gonna make it, we're not gonna go back and pay people who've been here
Who like,
for 10 years for that extra 2 years.
right,
But we will make adjustments once we're hiring new people.
and say somebody has only been here for 4 years and they received 3, but now they really should have received 4. They also will not be retroactively.
Not retroactively, but they're forward. So they signed a contract based on the current salary schedule.
Yeah.
And so we're not gonna go back and say, here's 10 years of back pay.
Right.
We're gonna say, the salary schedule has now changed.
Yeah.
And so we will move you on the salary schedule.
Okay, so it really does have like a 30-day impact.
It does.
So does it feel then like we'd like to know the impact before we actually make any sort of recommendation?
I would like to know.
Well, then, I guess that's our answer.
Okay, so
We'd like to know.
I
what the heck we're
suggest we
talking
table this item too, I probably should have.
about. Okay.
thought about that at the beginning, but anyway, now we've had the discussion.
Yes. And do you feel like next month is a reasonable turnaround? Do you need 2 months to get it done?
Do you think so?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
She thinks so, so
Okay.
therefore I think so.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, we table it again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that was 3.4. 3.5 was pre-tabled,
Yes.
so we're not talking about that. 3.6, administrative pay scale review.
All right, so hopefully we have the calculations right this time.
Oh, was there?
Elizabeth's on it.
Dang it, I tell her, she needs to have Elizabeth look at this before it goes to the back.
For the assistant director and the executive director, both of the proposals are less on steps 5 and 6 than in the current.
So wait, oh, you're saying that it's not correct?
Yeah.
That's the intent, then maybe it is correct, but it's not an intended pay cut.
So now, what one are you looking at?
For example, on the executive director,
Current one or the proposed?
either one, if you start on the current for executive director,
Yeah.
step 5, it's $522.18 per day.
This,
On the proposal, it's $518.27.
see this, so currently we're at 537. And if the new one is, it's 528. So we're proposing that, you
Because
got my salary.
the current one was, it looked like it was an error. Here's how I understood it, 3% the first year,
Uh-huh.
and then 2% each year after.
Right. This should still be
It
this.
should be more than that.
Yeah.
But that smells like a table to me.
It does.
I'm gonna keep this. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's pretty
Thanks.
awesome. We appreciate you.
Okay, any other discussion?
No.
Okay, well, that was the whole agenda.
All right.
Next meeting is Tuesday, October 8th, which is correct, right?
The second Tuesday.
Yep. Okay. And yeah, I guess offline, maybe parents we can talk about if there's a better time. This might be the perfect time. If there is, let's change it earlier rather than later.
Yeah, you could move it to like 3:30.
I could do, no.
This
4?
is literally 4:15, I'm like barely getting back here. Like an extra 5 minutes would give me.
All right.
I don't know that earlier is gonna be realistic for any of us.
Okay, and that's totally
So,
fine.
All right,
I don't
it
think
was-
that's gonna be realistic.
I'm just grateful that we actually have the discussion because sometimes I feel like we just keep rolling in the same way without thinking about it. So,
All right, we
All
are adjourned.
okay, thank you very much.
Yes. This is the biggest packet. Even